And just in case that's not enough, above that there is somewhere between 12 and 20 B-52 Stratoforce.
Dude, calm down. You flexed. We get it. Okay. How's it going, folks? Jack here. I am genuinely excited for this video because I know a bit about this story, and you know what? I might just get my Paul Bunyan on. Alright, this is going to be good. Let's get into it.
Ah yes, that time that North Korea told America that we couldn't trim a tree, and America was legitimately ready to start World War III about it. World War Tree, if you will. Today we're talking about the Korean axe murder incident and America's response to that incident, Operation Paul Bunyan.
Totally normal escalations. That was kind of deserved.
But first, this video is brought to you by the two biggest sponsors of the channel. We've got Zydax custom gaming PCs, computers built right here in America with American-made tech support, and they have a lifetime warranty. They can build you anything you want to
What
any
a
spec you
tool
want,
and
but
everything.
also they have some that are already pre-built and ready to ship. And then, of course, my favorite sporting goods store, Shields. They've got over 30 amazing retail locations all across the United States. I'm not just saying that because they're giving me money. It's legitimately the best sporting goods store I've ever set foot in. But if you don't live near one of the retail locations, they have an even better online store with price matching and satisfaction guaranteed. I'm gonna have links and discount codes for both those sponsors in the description down below and on my website, thefatelectrician.com. Let's get back to the video. All right, once upon a time, July 1953, North and South Korean leadership would meet in a small village known as Punjong, right near the 38th parallel, where they would sign an armistice that would technically only pause, but essentially end the Korean War. From this moment forward, we have the official military demarcation line, essentially the line in the sand separating North and South Korea. Surrounding that demarcation line is a 2.5 mile wide, 160 mile long buffer zone known as the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. And that's pretty much it. The Iron Curtain goes up, North Korea becomes the world's largest secret society, and the entire world gets to stand by and watch as there is a competition between capitalism and communism to see which one is actually better. And well, 70 years later, the results are visible from outer space. Wait, let me guess. You're going to say that's not real communism. Well, I'll tell you what. Every time anything bad happens under capitalism, I'm just going to respond by saying, oh, well, that's not real capitalism. How about that?
You take that. Keyboard warrior. Yeah, I think that is totally fair. I think that people just have a bit too oversimplistic understanding of these terms, like, which I think is sort of fair, because I don't expect everybody to like have a deep understanding of like political systems and or they usually get conflated between political and economic systems, because in one you have an economic system dealing with private and or corporate ownership that has like what is it, the terminology for it, rivalrous and non-rivalrous goods. Like, there's like an entire arc that makes it all complicated, but it's basically private ownership where the competition is made. But on the other one, you have a system and or would be actually theory, because its true form never truly came into action, that advocates for the vesting of those goods and ownership of all that to the entirety of the people. And while capitalism has been in the works since like the 1500s and has proven to be both good and bad, socialism, well, in its true form, never came truly into play, because the very person that is associated with it, Marx, because Frederick Engels never gets mentioned at all. He'll never get credit for anything that he wrote. Never wanted it to have the form that it has today, because he was vetting for a stateless government form of government. And I say socialism here because it was supposed to be a stepping stone to communism, but it never came to fruition in the way that he wanted it, because, well, the forms that we've seen of communism have had the requirement of like an authoritarian state, where, well, something similar to what we've seen in the likes of North Korea took into place. To just keep it simple, is that very often are people just comparing the two, being like, oh, capitalism is when profit and socialism is Venezuela. I say this because, like, I think 4 years ago now, Fox News made a thing about Denmark here, talking about how we were extremely socialist and communist to a certain degree. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, have you ever heard of the Nordic system? You can have a huge democratic political system that has free market capitalism and also a large social security system. Those do work together. Huh. Well, I guess I turned my Reddit Andy mode on there, and I more or less played into the character that he perhaps was trying to portray.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways, that village where the treaty was signed would go on to become the JSA, or the Joint Security Area, and in theory, this is supposed to be the only point where North and South Korean forces could intermingle. The North Koreans could pass the armistice line into South Korea, and vice versa, provided everybody stayed within the confines of this particular village. Obviously, the point of having a place like this was so that everybody could have a place to exchange prisoners, have peace talks, what have you. But naturally, the intermingling of North Korean and UN forces over the course of time would lead to a bunch of fights breaking out. Luckily, they foresaw this coming, and there was very strict rules about having firearms inside of the JSA.
Only
and
5 people, I think,
nobody
was it?
really ever had them on them. Despite that, there was so many skirmishes so often that the UN would try to get North Korea to agree that they should still abide by the demarcation line. North Koreans stay on their half of the JSA, and South Korean and UN forces stay on their half of the JSA. North Korea consistently refused. And that's all the background info you need. So, fast forward, August 6, 1976. Inside the JSA, there's a bridge. That bridge is called the Bridge of No Return because once you cross that bridge, you not only cross the military demarcation line, but you also cross the border to the JSA, meaning that you are now inside of North Korea, hence the name, the Bridge of No Return.
I quickly had to pull up the covers there, or the blinds, because the sun was starting to grill my eyes. A couple of years ago, when I was still very much active in like church work, I was still Christian back then, pointing that out, so it's a bit contextual to what I'm about to tell you. But at the time, one of the churches that we were involved with had a branch in South Korea. Well, you don't necessarily need to point out South Korea because if it's any of the Koreas, it is South Korea. Because when you point that out, it makes you sound like you're the factor. But amongst those were some actually who were like third generation of people who fled from the north. And also the church leader himself was somebody who grew up during this time. He was very young though, but he could recall some of the incidents on, for example, the likes of places like Jeju Island. For those of you who know your Korean War lore, you'll know that some insane atrocities were committed there by the South Korean government themselves. And he would tell us about areas like these where some of the POWs actually, some decided not to cross them and others were reunited with their families there. It's quite a gruesome story when you think about it. But yeah, this is the 70s. But yeah, this was established in, I want to say the 50s, right? That this was already operational back then in the 50s. So yeah, that was during the time of one of the worst leaders that South Korea ever have had, Syngman Rhee. I might tell you a little bit about him if it fits with the story, but let's keep going.
As you can see here on the JSA side of the bridge, there is military checkpoint 3. As I'm sure you can imagine, that's very important because, well, if the North Koreans are going to attack, they're probably going to incorporate that bridge somehow. They've got a military observation post right there. If the North Koreans are coming, they're going to send off the warning. Next thing you know, all of America knows that you're here.
Of course, he uses that.
Now all of the UN knows that you're here. All right, but the problem is right next to checkpoint 3, there's a big-ass 100-foot-high poplar tree, and that tree is blocking the vision from all the other checkpoints from being able to see checkpoint 3, meaning that in theory the North Koreans could invade, take out checkpoint 3, build up a big enemy force while using this tree as cover, and then take out the rest of the JSA. So this tree is a security issue. We got to get rid of it. Okay, so this is not a big deal whatsoever. That tree is inside the JSA. It's on the South Korean side, so it's technically in South Korea. So they send out some South Korean soldiers with some axes. They're going to go chop down this tree. That's going to be the end of it. No big deal whatsoever. Then the North Koreans show up being dicks and they're like, no, you're not allowed to cut this tree down because we said so.
Here comes the American imperialist oppressors and the UN, but whatever. And with their rules and their deep-seated desire for deforestation. Oh my God. I think that the excuse that they went with was that Kim Il-sung, whom, as tradition demanded it, the soon-to-be, well, not soon to be at the time, he was already the dictator, was ordained by God and was treated as a deity, and basically, yeah, planted the tree himself, you know. like, oh man, the reason for instigation of war were weird. And it is extremely weird in this time. Like in the 50s, like some of the reasons that they would use were understandable. Like that actually will make people like double think, even the South Korean army. But this was just fucking dumb.
That's why. And the South Koreans are like, what? Okay, well, I'm going to go get the Americans, and then we're going to come back, and then we're all going to cut down the tree together. Bye. All right, fast forward a couple weeks, August 18th, 1976. This time, a 15-man working party comprised of Americans and South Koreans show up at this tree to cut it down. And once again, the North Koreans show up almost immediately. This time, there's 11 of them, and they are being led by an officer nicknamed the Bulldog because he is well known and has a reputation for starting shit inside the JSA and instigating a bunch of fights. He then proceeds to tell the Americans that they have to stop trimming that tree because that particular poplar tree was planted by none other than Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea.
Oh, shit.
To which the Americans, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but they were like, oh, really? Did he? He planted this tree? Kim Il-sung, the same guy that you guys think invented the hamburger and the burrito, and the first time he ever golfed, he golfed a 38 under par with 11 hole-in-ones, and his body's so efficient that he doesn't have to use the bathroom because he doesn't generate waste. That guy.
Yeah, the god. Which, okay, a little bit of a weird point here, but not Kim Il-sung, but I think Kim Jong-il, or whomever he was that actually changed the rule for basketball. But within North Korea, the basketball rules are a bit different. In a case that I actually find to be kind of dope. For example, slam dunks are worth 3 points. 3 points throws, if they don't touch the rim, are worth 4 points. And free shots, if they're missed, actually takes you 1 point down. I not gonna lie, these are pretty nice rules. Now, obviously, the rest about the country fucking sucks North Korea bad, but come on.
He planted this tree. I don't give a shit. So they turned around and kept cutting down this tree. So at this point, Officer Bulldog sends a runner across the bridge of no return into North Korea. A couple minutes later, 2 trucks show up with 30 more North Korean soldiers, and they all get out with clubs. At this point, Officer Bulldog tells the working party again, stop cutting down the tree or else. And the working party, under the impression they're not actually going to do anything, ignores them and just keeps cutting down the tree, at which point Officer Bulldog famously takes off his watch, wraps it in a handkerchief, sets it down, and yells, Chukyo, meaning kill in North Korean, at which point all of the soldiers attacked the members of the working party. Every member of the working party was injured and 2 Americans were killed. Shit has officially hit the fan. The entire US military is put on DEFCON 3, which is the highest level of readiness that the military can go to without actually being at war. The president and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are dragged into the bunker underneath the White House to begin getting briefed by the CIA, and North Korea is shitting its pants because a couple of their guys just may have kicked off World War III.
This is the 70s. Who was the president at the time? Nixon? Sounds about right, isn't it?
No.
Like, most US presidents past 1900s are pretty easy to remember. Except for the guy who comes after or before Hoover. Cavill something? I can't remember his last name, but yeah, something Cavill. Because it's... Oh... No. Nixon, Ford, President Cardigan. Yeah, like making fun names of presidents is a nice way of managing your mind palace, like the way that you can navigate through your memories to remember things. Yeah, at least that's the way that I do it. But yeah, I guess Nixon or Ford. Ford didn't last long, right? He wasn't even elected.
Within 4 hours, the North Koreans issue a public statement trying to pin the entire thing on America, saying the Americans that were there instigated the entire thing, and it's their fault. Then North Korean leadership goes before the Non-Aligned Nations Committee, which for the purposes of this story, just think of it as like not NATO, here's the Non-Aligned Nations.
Oh, okay, right.
You get the idea. They then try to pass a resolution that says they should all condemn America for our violent actions, and America needs to leave the Korean Peninsula altogether, and somehow this passes. At which point America basically looks over and says, that's nice that you guys passed a little rule, go ahead and try to enforce it, I dare you.
Whatever you think, you better think, man. Otherwise I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain
I would
down
go
a
Tropic Thunder.
firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations.
We gotta go scorched earth.
Motherfucker, I will massacre you.
I will fuck you up. goddamn Tom Cruise in this. I did not know that he was the one playing there as Lars Grossman. But, damn, once the credits roll and they started doing the little dance, I was like, man, you are such a great actor. And also, Robert Downey Jr., I think that he got an N-word pass for playing that role.
Meanwhile, inside the president's bunker, all kinds of crazy ideas are getting thrown around, some of which include bombarding the entire DMZ with artillery fire, using Navy SEALs and precision-guided munitions to take out the North Korean barracks inside of the JSA, essentially killing all the North Koreans that had anything to do with this,
Jesus.
destroying the Bridge of No Return, and my personal favorite, just dropping a nuclear bomb off the coast of North Korea just to prove a point.
I mean, it's not the first time that this happened. At least that this was proposed. It's been done many times. I think that there was that one, the World War II hero that led the Korean War, the Allied forces, or just the UN plus America through the Korean War. He was told in person by Truman to step down because of his insubordination. Like, basically, there was a recommendation at the time when the Red Army, that being the People's Republic of China, decided to start a big offensive, and recommendations were made that perhaps a good idea would be to just drop nukes there. Now, Harry S. Truman was the only one who actually was allowed to do that, but the man in charge, if I just remember his name, Douglas MacArthur. Yes, Douglas MacArthur. Douglas MacArthur basically was like, we could nuke the thing, man. We have planes, we can transport them, we just drop them there. The usual, we've done that before. Truman was like, I'm the one who knocks. I get to decide. And he was like, I'm gonna push the button, I'm gonna push it. And Truman basically just had to step in himself and tell the dude to stop that bullshit.
At this point, the president chimes in and he's like, no, this has to be an appropriate response. We don't want to overkill this situation and kick off World War III. So that begs the question, what is an appropriate response to the president? Well, that depends on the president. And the president at this particular time was none other than Gerald Ford. You see, that's absolutely terrifying.
I remembered right.
You have no idea why, because Gerald Ford doesn't have much brand recognition in modern times, so let me fill you in. Gerald Ford played college football at the University of Michigan and had offers to go to the NFL from the Lions and the Green Bay Packers, and turned both of them down because he wanted to be a boxing coach at Yale before he went into law school to become a politician.
Okay.
Somewhere along the way, this guy becomes friends with Richard Nixon.
Oh, so that's how. I knew that he wasn't elected, but I didn't know that, of course it was the ridiculous Nixon that he got there. Look, I know, hold on. Before some keyboard warriors start attacking me for calling him ridiculous Nixon, I'm not a fan of the man. Look, I like to make jokes about American president when they deserve it, and he totally deserved it. Wasn't he impeached? Like, many times, like, people really hated him because he was very corrupt.
Fast forward, he's ready to retire. His friend Richard Nixon is the president of the United States, and Richard Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, gets accused of taking bribes and has to step down as vice president. At which point, Nixon calls up his old buddy and is like, hey, will you fill in as VP for me? So Gerald Ford, not wanting to let down his buddy, is like, sure, absolutely, I'll come be the vice president. So he serves as VP for a little bit, and then Watergate happens, Richard Nixon gets impeached, and Gerald Ford becomes the 38th president of the United States and the only president in American history that was never elected as VP or the president. And the first thing he does as president is he gives a presidential pardon to his buddy Richard Nixon, who just got impeached, so he can't go to prison.
Yeah, obviously everybody hates you, dude. Come on. Are you kidding me? Like, at this point, it doesn't even matter what political allegiance you have. Like, You're gonna get flamed on.
And this pisses off absolutely everybody. Left, right, middle, doesn't matter. Everybody is furious with Gerald Ford over this. There is a 0% chance that he is ever going to get reelected right out of the gate. All right, so just so we're on the same page, President Gerald Ford, your traditional football playing, boxing, manly man that didn't want the job as president in the first place and has zero hopes of ever getting reelected, as well as having a history of being willing to sacrifice his personal image and the future of his career just to help out the homies, and we're going to find out what this man deems as an appropriate response. But one thing's for certain, and it is that poplar tree is absolutely coming down. Fast forward 3 days later, August 21st, 7 a.m., a bunch of American and South Korean vehicles roll into the JSA, and Operation Paul Bunyan would officially begin. Inside of those vehicles, there's a 16-man tree trimming crew, and they are being escorted by 2 platoons of American grunts, roughly 60 guys, all carrying axe handles and pistols, ready to teach the North Koreans a lesson if they decide they want to try to stop them again. Now, is there supposed to be 60 guys in the JSA carrying firearms? No, but they're just carrying pistols. It's the smallest gun Uncle Sam has to offer because America is trying very, very hard to be appropriate.
I don't like the music there. What's up?
Also, they brought a tank, which as you can see is basically a really small tank with a snowplow on the front and an enormous gun.
That's huge.
It's average, okay?
That's pretty pathetic.
Hey, even if it is a little bit on the smaller side of average.
It's not the size of the barrel. It's the way you... I'm sorry, even I can't even make apologetics for that one. It's too small.
A single grain of rice can tip the scale.
And if that wasn't enough, they're also being backed up by 64 Black Berets, the South Korean Special Forces guys, one of which would actually go on to be the president of South Korea, Moon Jae-in.
Oh. What do you know?
Okay, here's the deal with the Black Berets. As a minimum requirement, every single one of them has to be a black belt in Taekwondo. And I know what you're thinking. My nephew got a black belt in Taekwondo from the YMCA when he was like 13 years old. Big deal.
Not quite. Totally cringe comment to add here. I read some Korean manhwas, which is basically like manga, but from Korea. Korean comic books. Because, man, sometimes they just hit different. But in there's one called Manager Kim that deals with like basically a plot akin to John Wick with a mixture of Taken and all of the Bourne movies combined all in together. But it also deals with like the background story of the character as a North Korean spy / soldier who defected to the South side, and in there it talks about the different techniques that they were operating with and stuff like that. Like usually a lot of comic books tend to make a lot of shit up, right? Just to hype up a character and make them more powerful than normal. But what I appreciate about this type of thing is that the information that they actually provide historically is pretty accurate. So I went out and started searching how they train, and my god.
Okay, I realize it's the same word. Trust me, it's not the same thing. These guys could kick the shit out of your nephew.
Also, they look badass.
And the best part of all is the Taekwondo's not even going to come into play because as all the vehicles pull up, the 16-man tree trimming crew runs out, they start cutting down the tree, the Americans get out with their pistols and their axe handles, the South Koreans pull up, they get out, and they start unstrapping something from the bottom of their vehicles. Against the orders of their president, they had all snuck in M16s, grenade launchers, crew-served weapons, anti-tank weapons, and some of them even had claymores strapped to their chest.
Dude.
The South Korean Special Forces has officially come to party. At this point, they're looking over at the Americans like, really? You guys brought axe handles and pistols? What are you doing, playing fucking Jenga?
Guys, we thought you as being the ones who are not so reasonable. Why are we the one escalating things here?
At this point, the Americans are like, hey, I appreciate the effort. You guys are awesome. That's great. But here's the deal. The only thing better than breaking the rules and getting away with it is
finding a
not
loophole.
having to break the rules and still getting away with it. AKA, you just got to find that loophole and make them make new rules later because they didn't know that was an option. You see, they told us we can't have guns in the JSA. They didn't say anything about
On deck?
above the JSA.
Oh.
Because circling overhead, there is 20 Huey utility helicopters, and on those helicopters is an entire company of American infantry, roughly 120 19-year-old athletic alcoholics with machine guns, and as soon as those helicopters touch down, they are ready to get out and start kicking ass. But here's the deal with that, it wouldn't be appropriate to send out a bunch of utility helicopters without a security escort, so they're being accompanied by 7 Cobra attack helicopters. And just in case that's not enough, above that there is somewhere between 12 and 20 B-52 Stratoforce.
Dude, calm the fuck down. You flexed. We get it. Okay. Oh my god. Oh shit. Oh, it reminds me of one of my favorite comic book quotes, like, it's time to dominate.
Fortresses that just got in from Guam that are now doing hot laps around the entire demilitarized zone, each of which is carrying like 70,000 pounds worth of bombs, some of which were allegedly nuclear warheads. In addition to that, there's an entire fighter squadron of American F-4 Phantoms that just got in from Okinawa, and a bunch of South Korean F-5s.
The tree became an Avengers level threat. Oh, this is the best. This is the best. Look, I remember the Cassius Clay video made me freaking lose it. And the Dirty Dozens obviously were a good run-up on this, but ooh-wee.
As well as a bunch of American F-111s that just got in from Idaho. In addition to that, there's roughly 10,000 troops on standby just inside the South Korean border, ready to run in if they're needed. And on top of that, there's another 12,000 troops already en route to South Korea, just in case. Oh, and now the USS Midway, a fucking aircraft carrier, and her entire security detail are parked off the North Korean coast.
Come on! Did they also issue submarines? Queuing the freaking satellite from RoboCop that are ready to shoot people down with a
$400 billion.
laser? At this point, I'll freaking believe it. Like, they have a satellite up there in the sky with a target in 2 locations, Pyongyang and Panmunjom, the point where the tree is located. God damn!
And all of this was done in the span of 3 days. America has probably just conducted the greatest showing of force ever and turned this poplar tree into the largest game of fuck around and find out in human history. Cut back to the men on the ground. Operation Paul Bunyan has been going on for approximately 5 minutes. The 5 longest minutes in human history of an entire army watching 16 dudes trim a tree and not a single sign of a North Korean anywhere. Which is really weird. Normally they would have been here by now. What is going on? At this point, the American leadership comes to the realization that the North Koreans know exactly what's going on. There's a 0% chance that they don't, and they have decided that their best option is to not show up at all, and then later on they're going to play it off like they had no idea the entire thing actually happened, making it appear as though America's show of force was not that big of a deal.
You can't do that. There has to be something done here. We will not be the bad guys in this.
At this point, the American leadership takes a deep breath, and they're like, okay, we have to keep this appropriate. We're the bigger people in this.
Bullshit.
That's a great PR move by the North Koreans. Doesn't matter. We know what we did. We know what we accomplished. And that should be enough. I'm just kidding. The American leadership immediately sent a transmission to the North Koreans telling them that they were there for, and I quote, to finish the work left unfinished.
Wow. Wow.
Now, the North Korean frontline communications just go absolutely nuts. We know this because American intelligence was monitoring their frontline communications, and one of the intel analysts that was listening said, and I quote, "This move blew their fucking minds." At this point, the North Koreans are absolutely terrified, but they have to do something because they've got way too much pride not to. So, all of the North Korean troops in the immediate area are ordered to go to the Bridge of No Return. Within a matter of minutes, a bunch of trucks pull up on the other side of the Bridge of No Return, and 150 North Korean soldiers get out, and they proceed to stand there and watch silently for what I presume to be the longest 35 minutes of their entire lives as they watch the Americans finish cutting down this tree. And that's pretty much it. The Americans finished trimming.
They freaking left the tree stump. Come now. Oh, damn it. That's just too much of a flex.
This tree, they left a big ass stump there, so the North Koreans never ever forgot about it. And then once that stump
And a
out of the way,
memorial.
they put a plaque there in honor of the two soldiers that lost their lives, Lieutenant Mark Barrett and Captain Arthur Boniface. North Korea was then also ordered to pay reparations to their family members. In addition to that, the North Koreans issued a statement saying the entire situation was regrettable, which according to the experts is the closest thing to an apology that you will ever get out of the North Koreans. And then to
Yeah.
absolutely everybody's surprise, on August 25th, the North Koreans come back to the negotiating table and they're like, hey, remember that idea you guys have had for like the last 20 years where you wanted to split the JSA in half to separate North and South Korean forces so a bunch of dumb shit didn't happen? Yeah, we think we'd finally like to do that. So yeah, in conclusion, I guess, this has been the story about how World War III almost got started by a tree. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Oh my god. This was insane. How did the fuck did they let this happen? One dude could not let his ego go. Had to instigate a fight. Damn, it would have been great if the US could have destabilized like the North Korea in this way during the Korean War. Like it would have been less of a like prototype to the Vietnam War. And I'm not joking. Like strictly speaking, like to some of the things that I was alluding to before, that basically it is kind of considered as being the Korean or the Vietnam War that is forgotten, because like a shit ton of war crimes were committed there. And I'm not even talking about things that you may have been taught in school if you were so lucky. Things like the Chinese POW camps, where you have individuals like Colonel Abbott who talked about how the Chinese were experimenting on people, the North Korean camps with their war crimes, and of course the South and American POW camps where South Korean forces not only had been engaging in death marches and American leadership had been abusing the people that they had captured there, or such thing as the Sinchon massacre. I know I'm putting a sour mood right now, but I'm strictly talking about things here on a political level. Because, again, all the way back in the 60s, not even 60s, the 50s, when the US as well as the UN repelled the Red forces from Korea, more specifically the capital that was pushed back and forth, Seoul, a lot of people were fleeing all the way back to Busan, like at the bottom of the map. And then you have places like Daeju that I mentioned where some war crimes were committed. During that time, a certain dude called Sigmund Rhee was elected. No, he wasn't elected. He came into power. He was a man who had basically been sacked from his leadership in, I believe, Shanghai? Or, yeah, I think it was in Shanghai, for misuse of power. And somehow, through some sniveling things and methods, once Japan lost his power in 45, later on 48, he somehow made his way to power. There were talks about corruption through the American leaders that aided him to come into power there. Well, so at least that they had a man in charge. Now, because the Red Scare, the thing that put our boy Oppenheimer in jail, or at least in house arrest, was very much red and hot, looping things back a little bit to the communism thing that we were talking about in the very beginning of the video. It was of the utmost importance to squash anything that could at least allude to communism rising somewhere. Now, because Mr. Sigmund Rhee was not elected by the people, and because he was continuing to perpetuate the same thing that he did in Shanghai, being extremely corrupt, and because, well, DC was just sponsoring anybody that was very much aiding in repelling the Red forces, people in other prefectures started talking about creating their own parties, unionizing, perhaps creating their own elections, and they would not have any of that. Now, obviously, there were parts of the rebellions that actually wanted to defect to the North Korean side, which the US, as being advisory, that was the role that they said they were, for South Korea, attempted to push those things back. And to a certain degree, it kind of worked. But Sigmund Rhee was like, that's gonna take too long. Just ask DC to provide us with enough firearms. We're gonna deal with these 30 or so thousand people, which later on was actually found to be noted by themselves around 60,000. So the jet... Oh god, a word that I don't even know if we're allowed to use that on YouTube sometime. But the unsubscribed that many people from their own villages. Now, naturally, after enough demonstration, Rhee resigned, but since the country was so inexperienced in democracy, the short rest that they had was very short-lived. The country experienced a plethora of dictatorships afterwards, and it was only until the 80s where the actual final republic that we know today was established. Alright, so let's finish the video on a brighter note because I think that I've sunburned and soured the mood a little bit too much with my rant on war crimes. This was an amazing video once again by the Fat Electrician and an amazing show of force, like greatest flex of all times. But as always, please do make sure to go and subscribe to the man himself. The link will be in the description below as always. And of course, if you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button. With that said though, wish you all to have a wonderful day. See you guys in the next one. Bye.